That should be the last order for today. This restaurant has served me well over the past few weeks, but I think it's time for an upgrade. Hey everyone, today's video is all about how I designed this pixel art indoor environment. We'll start off with planning, sketching, and then pixel art rendering. The environment that I'm making today is integral to the storyline of our game, so I'm going to be walking you guys through all of the ideas and concepts that I had in mind when making this room. I'll also be giving you guys some tips and go over some of the problems that I face and how you can avoid them too. So let's get started. When planning an indoor environment, I first think, what kind of place is it? In this case, I'm going for a relaxing, cozy, and calming tea house/restaurant. So I first start off looking for images and references online to help me jog up some ideas. I like using Pinterest to find my images because it's very helpful in finding exactly what I need. So first, I search for some restaurant ideas. There's so many options, but I like this image because I like the design of the wooden table. If I want more design similar to this table, I can just hover over the image and click on the pointer above the table and it will give me even more references, and then I can just pop the image into my photo collage. I like to make two types of photo collages. One for the overall environment, so just like a mix of different restaurants and tea shops, just to get a general idea of the place. And different collages for the specific furnitures that I want in the environment, such as storage, tables, etc. You get the gist. Before I create anything in pixel art, I like to do a sketch first. This is because I can just scribble any ideas I have and then refine it later in pixel art. But if it's easier for you to make a draft in pixel art, you can do that too. When designing, it's vital that you put your character into the world first so you can scale all of the furniture to that character and make sure all the sizing and portions are done right. The tea house that I'm making is inside of a train which is owned by a cat named Caddy, which you as the player are learning from to become a tea master. So with this insight into the story, it will greatly impact how I design the environment. I use a sketch as a reference while I make my pixel art in Photoshop. But if you want to use a free app, I started off using GIMP, which worked well for the start of my journey, and Sprite is also another good option which I've seen a lot of other game devs use. As the restaurant is built inside of a train, I knew I wanted really large windows to capture those scenic moments that we pass through visiting different regions in the game. Because our player never really leaves the train, I want to trick the player into thinking they're not trapped in the same environment. They are trapped, but I don't want them to feel like that. So it's really important that I have the background be very visible for the player to give the sense that we are in different locations. My first design of the windows were very flat, but then I thought about how Caddy would probably love to perch on the windowsills and lounge on it. So I gave the window more of a isosceles trapezium shape, giving the cat more room to lay and sunbathe, and if I was a cat, I think I would like that. I plan to have a majority of the game's cutscenes play out in this room, as you'll meet many people across the world who come to visit Caddy's tea service. So to signal that someone has entered the shop, I added a door chime above the door to make those entrances a little bit more significant and memorable. Bruh, didn't you see the sign? We're closed. I really like the idea of having chairs and tables by the window because there's nothing like sipping a cup of tea and enjoying the view. But when I was looking for more references, I found this cabinet that was placed by the window which doubled as a seat where you could rest and drink tea, which is pretty genius, so of course I had to incorporate this. Instead of a cabinet, I made a two-step staircase so that my little player could reach the seats. Then added two fluffy pillows, and it fit really well into the game as it makes the restaurant feel a lot more comfier and adds to the cozy atmosphere I'm trying to achieve. This is why references are so important, because you can get such great inspiration from them and they can completely transform and elevate your initial ideas. I then added the chairs and tables from the old restaurant into the new one. I've had this cutscene idea in my head for a long time, where a large structure inside of the restaurant gets knocked down. and it's all like dramatic and stuff. And whenever I have these story ideas, I end up making these pieces to work for the story because I've created this moment in my mind that can only be done if I design the room in a certain way. So that might be a strange way to conceptualize things, but realistically that's how my process works sometimes. So I thought a display case would be perfect because it will make that moment even more dramatic when all those items inside fall out and spill over. There were a lot of beautiful round display cases I found. However, they were a bit too fancy for my restaurant, and the intricate thinner structures don't really match my game's aesthetic, so I took the main points of interest, which was the round shape, and simplified it into a more boxy shelf. It ended up being a great divider inside the restaurant by sectioning the entrance from the base of the room. When I was thinking about what to put in front of the shelf, I thought of having more chairs and tables for the customers to sit at, but then the seating arrangement started to look a little plain and repetitive. Then I remembered that Caddy the tea master has to teach Faye how to make all of the complex recipes, and it would be pretty lame if Caddy taught Faye how to make tea on a dining table. Or I could make a separate study, but what's the point if I have a perfect empty spot in the restaurant for it? I wanted this study to blend in with the restaurant, but still be convincing enough to be a study and not just another dining area. I carved out a lower section so the study could feel a bit more private, and added some lanterns to add ambience, especially when it's nighttime. And because this area kind of became a study, I thought it would be perfect to add some books, scrolls, and other miscellaneous items to the shelf. I also turned the lower walls into some drawers that could store important documents and recipes that the public shouldn't have access to. When it came to the front desk, I just made an L-shaped cabinet with some utensils that could be seen inside other herbal tea shops such as a scale and tea leaf tongs. I also added a waiting station which connects to the kitchen so that the waiter can retrieve the orders and serve it to the customers. You as a player live upstairs above the tea house, so I guarded off the bottom left of the room with a barricade to cover the staircase so that it's clear to customers that they can't just be entering this area. This part of the room still looked a little plain for my liking, so I wasn't sure what else to put here. Sometimes when I'm in a rut, I think about how the space could be used if I lived here. Maybe underneath the staircase there's a bunch of boxes to show all the unused utensils for the restaurant or kitchen. So I thought maybe all the unused tea leaf packages could be stored underneath. Having these items that aren't really core pieces of furniture but just day-to-day utility items helps make the place feel a lot more lived in. Another item I knew I really wanted was to have a wall telephone. This is because the tea master will not always be present because they're kind of busy, they've got other things to do. However, there's not much space that I can put this wall telephone. So I just added it to the staircase barrier, which probably isn't the most realistic thing because it would have like exposed wires hanging from somewhere. But it's okay for some rules to be broken, because trying to make everything realistic can end up just putting your art and creative expression into a box. And this design still doesn't look too out of place, so I'm happy with it. When it came to making the background, I made 3 separate layers: the sky, sea, and cloud reflection. To show that there's movement within the water, I simply made 2 variations of the water ripple texture. The cloud's reflection will be distorted by the water, so I made 2 textures, a clean reflection and a distorted reflection. When played back to back, you get this distorted reflective effect. Usually reflections in the water sway back and forth in this wobbly-like effect. To achieve this, the first frame uses the clean reflection, then the next one moves 1 pixel to the right with the distorted reflection. Then I repeated the first frame in the third frame to return the reflection back to the center point, and then for the last frame, I used the distorted cloud again, but translated it to the left by 1 pixel. And that's how you get this subtle reflective sway in the clouds. Then I chucked these layers into Unity, our game engine. Our programmer Robert created a scrolling effect where the layers would simply move right to left and repeat the illustrations infinitely like an endless moving wallpaper. We can also adjust the speed that it moves by with this scrolling variable. The features further away move slower, whereas the foreground items move faster. So the cloud speed is slower than the water because the clouds are further away, whereas the water is closer. From a basis standpoint, the shape of the restaurant isn't that interesting. It's just a rectangle. But by adding large structures such as the bookshelf and the front desk, it does a really good job at sectioning off areas and breaking up the flow of the restaurant. On top of that, we ended up implementing 3 different level heights, the highest being the window seat, the middle being the main base of the restaurant, and the lower level being the study. None of these level foundations are that dramatic of a height difference from each other, but they still add a lot of dimension to the build than if it was just flat. One of the issues that I faced and had to come back to were the windows. This is because the angle at which I drew the windows was wrong. It was too flat of a view, and I had to draw from a more 45-degree angle instead. I did notice this earlier when I was in the color blocking phase for the window, but didn't know how to solve the issue, and I thought maybe if I rendered it, it would be fine. But it wasn't fine, and I wasted a lot of time fixing it. There were a lot of slight changes I had to alter, and it was just a pain. So next time when I see that something is a little bit off, I'll just render other things in the meantime before coming back and tackling this issue. Because when you look at things for so long sometimes, you can't tell the problem until you take a step back and look back at it with like fresh eyes. Woo! We finally have a new completed room outside of the kitchen. Really completed this time. I can't wait to film here in the next few episodes. I try to go into as much detail as possible with my designing process, so I hope that this video was easy to follow. I'm very proud of how this environment came out. I was very critical of it when I first completed it, but as the days go by and filming inside it, it's really starting to grow on me. I did want to keep Caddy the cat as a secret for the next episode, but there was no way I could talk about how I made this restaurant without talking about Caddy as well. If you guys have any questions or ideas for Caddy's tea service, or just your thoughts on the video, please leave a comment and I'd love to hear what you have to say. If you like this video, drop a like, and if you want to see more, subscribe and hit that bell for post notifications to stay up to date with everything Caddy's tea service. See you in the next one.